Well, good evening, everyone. And can you guys hear me? I can't. It's funny because up here we can't hear ourselves. So just so you know, if I start yelling, you'll know why. But just want to welcome all of you and thank you for really being here. This is our second in-person, get together for a conversation for protecting our democracy, and it's really just an exciting opportunity to kind of have these conversations that I think are so important to what's happening here in New Jersey and certainly what we're seeing nationally. I always say the most important thing any of us can give is our time. So I thank you for giving your time to be here. I thank all of you for giving your time to be here, especially right now in the holiday season and everything that's going on. I've got the 5-year-old and 3-year-old at home, so my list is pretty long that I'm working through here, trying to get all the stuff I need. But seriously, it is important that we do find the time to be here, and I know that's the hardest thing to find. So I thank you again for being part of this conversation, and I think that also leads us into what we're talking about tonight, that not everybody has the luxuries that we have in terms of time and ability and the options and opportunities that we have. But yet here we are, right? We're in this beautiful space. We thank the library, by the way, for really allowing us to be in this space. I think that's a really special thing. I want to thank the mayor as well for having us, and certainly that's appreciated, Mayor Cohen. So thank you so much. And last night Hanukkah being here, so thank you, for that as well. But a beautiful space. We've got people who are out and certainly joining the conversation. But again, tonight is about talking about that. Why is it that in New Jersey we see such inequity? Right? Why is it that we see not just in some faraway place, but town by town, such differences in policies and perspectives and vision for what New Jersey should look like, and what we can do about it collectively, and how we can engage more and more people to be part of the process. So really, that's what conversation is about today, and we've been talking about, and we want to help engage. Right? That's the goal of protecting our democracy. Democracy is not healthy unless everyone's participating, and that's at the core. So I think that's what we want to make sure we're having a conversation about tonight. So again, I thank you all for being here, and certainly please help me in welcoming our panel tonight. So first, yes, and I am Sean Spiller. I don't know if I even said that, but I'm Sean Spiller, Chair of Protecting Our Democracy, Mayor of Montclair, President of NJA, and just really excited to be here, tonight. So with that, Reverend, I'm going to start with you. So Reverend Eric Dobson is the Deputy Director at Fair Share Housing Center. He joined as Director of Community Engagement in 2012, assisting the Executive Director in all aspects of FSHC's daily operations and strategic planning. Eric also focuses on development, advocacy, and communication, policy, and coalition building in order to bring about racial, economic, and social integration. Eric is an ordained minister and holds a BA from Temple University in religion. He has extensive experience working with diverse communities and specializes in interfaith outreach. He is co-founder of the Open Communities LLC, a racial integration consultant firm that works to resolve both simple and complex conflicts of race, ethnicity, and socioeconomics. Eric also founded Planting Seeds of Hope, a nonprofit focused on youth development and education, and has served as the Pennsylvania Clergy Outreach Director during Obama's 2008 presidential campaign. And thank you so much for being here. Let's give him a round of applause, please. Kim Gaddy is the National and New Jersey Environmental Justice Director for Clean Water Action. She's been advocating for communities impacted by industrial pollution, as well as the goods movement system in Newark and across the country for 24 years. Kim develops and implements Clean Water Action, Clean Water Fund's grassroots environmental justice campaigns and coalition building efforts in New Jersey. She's a former Newark School Board member, the first City of Newark female Chief of Staff for Councilwoman Mildred Crump, and New York, New Jersey Regional Representative for Moving Forward Network. She was appointed by Governor Phil Murphy to serve as the chair of the New Jersey DEP's Environmental Justice Advisory Council and is a member of the New Jersey Green Jobs Council. She is a former chair of both the Newark Environmental Commission and the Essex County Environmental Commission. Please help me welcome her with a round of applause. Thank you. Kiran Gaudioso. All right, got that. There you go. Kiran was named the Chief Executive Officer of United Way Northern New Jersey and the President of the United for Alice effective March 2020. She has served as Chief Operating Officer since 2017, following 4 years as the organization's Senior Vice President of Community Impact and Community Relations. Kiran oversees an annual budget of $9.2 million and a staff of 50. She received her bachelor's in political science and policy studies from Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University, as well as a fellowship to attend the Eagleton Institute of Public Politics at Rutgers University, where she earned her master's in political science. Please help me welcome Kiran. Thank you so much. Ed Potosnak is the Executive Director of New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, a nonpartisan organization whose mission is to elect environmental champions and support laws which protect our environment and improve the quality of people's lives. In addition to his work at New Jersey's LCV, Ed is also chair of the New Jersey Keep It Green Coalition, the New Jersey State lead for the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed, a member of the Rutgers Glee Club, Alumni Advisory Committee, a Rutgers grad myself, I smile to see that, excellent, a member of the Board of Sustainable Jersey. He also serves as a council member in Franklin Township, that's the one in Somerset County, where he was former president and member of the School Board of Ed. Ed worked his way through Rutgers University, earning a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in education. Please help me welcome him with a big round of applause as well. And again, thank you all for being here and engaging in this conversation. And I really wanted to start with maybe something for each of you to answer, which is around, what do we talk about when we say protecting our democracy? What does it mean for a democracy to work? I maybe framed it as something where everyone can participate, everyone has a voice in that process. But through the lens of the work that each of you does, what is it that you see in terms of protecting the democracy, allowing democracy to be successful and thriving, and how the work that you do impacts that in some way? Kiran, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate this topic because it is not something we get to think about or talk about together. We were just chatting before about the hectic pace of everything happening at our state and the constant reactionary mode that we tend to be in as leaders and advocates. So I appreciate this topic. And I think for us, we think a lot about just the essence of participatory democracy and what does it mean to be able to participate and engage in democracy. And we know that for families and folks who are struggling financially and then everything that comes with that, there is no place for participating in democracy because it's not part of something that you can do when you wake up every day because you're literally fighting to get through the day, get to work, get the kids to school, get through your work day, put dinner on the table, get everybody settled and, do it all again the next day. So what I'm concerned about is just the progression of privilege that we've seen evolving around folks who are financially challenged and living in some form of poverty who are not at all in our democracy because of their day-to-day existence. So that's something I'd like us to think a lot more about.
Yeah, so Kim, maybe I'll go to you next and just saying in the framing of that, because I think oftentimes when people perceive threat to democracy, they think maybe January 6th or they think something of that scale, but that day-to-day disconnect, that day-to-day inability to be involved, right, because of other constraints is just as much, if not more, of a threat to democracy in ways. How is the work that you do, what you see, connected to democracy as a whole and people's ability to thrive in a democracy?
Well, as an environmental justice, organizer and director, I always start from the fact that nothing about us, without us, is for us. So it means that we have to allow spaces to be open to receive the most marginalized individuals who are left out of the conversations, don't have a seat at the table, and are left behind in their communities. The environmental degradation that they suffer from on a daily basis is because of a failing democratic system or democracy as a whole. And so you have thousands of individuals who cannot even engage in this process because of the zip code they reside in or the color of their skin. That's exactly. And so in order for democracy to work and be something that they feel they can embrace and be a part of, you have to include them in that conversation. You have to understand where they're coming from. And you have to be able to reach them where they are so that then they can feel a part of democracy. And so when we do the work that we do at Clean Water Action, every day talking to grassroots individuals, we lift their voices up so they can be seen and heard. Because now they can make the changes that work for them and their families and their communities. And once we do that, then as a whole, democracy will work.
Thank you. And I'll go to you and just say, you do a lot to connect some of these pieces of work. I say often, even in education, I'll sometimes get, stay in your lane, you know, and I know you do a lot of work in a lot of spaces as well. But maybe how do you see those pieces connecting as we're talking about this here?
Yeah, so New Jersey LCV stands for New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. And so we really lean into the voters piece of that, which is how we make sure we have environmental champions in office to do good things for the environment. And I think if you look at the turnout in our elections, it's pretty dismal. I think we celebrated 30% in the most recent election, and people were extremely happy because the weather didn't have as much of an impact because we had 2 weeks of early voting. I live in the second most diverse town in New Jersey, and it's a cool place to be. And I can also see the differences depending on where people are living in how easy it is or accessible all these different roadblocks we put in place. One example is registration. 45 days before the election, you're required to register to vote. If you move in between that or you move just before that, you might have missed your deadline. That means now you can't have a say. And it's 2023, we have electronic voting rolls. There's absolutely no reason we can't have same-day voter registration. That's a barrier. It's a significant barrier. And in my community, there's a lot of transient people. That means they're moving around a lot, and they're getting cut off. There's just so much paperwork to keep up with, an extra thing when they're trying to get their phone connected or figure out how they can get to and from work if they have transportation. And that's a barrier. And there are lots of examples like that where New Jersey's gotten better, but we're not as good as we could be. And there's resistance from political establishment because it changes sort of the metric of who they can mail and who actually can show up, and it can change some things. But the truth is, these are folks that want to be involved, and we've created all kinds of systems. It's systemic racism at its core to make it inaccessible. And we work hard to work with community partners to look for opportunities to build momentum and pass laws that reform that. Same-day voter registration is one that's long overdue. I think we need to update our civil rights with a New Jersey Voter Rights Act that will look at a lot of how we're doing redistricting and other components that can make a big difference in communities. And we think that's essential to environmental protection because they're interconnected. If people aren't voting and have a chance to vote for pro-environment candidates, we're going to lose on all the issues that we care about. We're going to have dirtier water, dirtier air, less land in the most densely populated state. That's kind of how we see it. We get pushback, but at least I can keep pointing to the fact that voters is in our name, and voting is a part and an activity of a voter.
No, well, that's a good point. I mean, the vote comes down to that, right, to be able to shape policy and move direction. Erica, might go to you as well, the same pieces in terms of, maybe that could be a theme of New Jersey's doing well, but we could do better. I think something that was just noted, in the work that you do, how do you see a connection to a healthy, thriving democracy, pushing back against the barriers that I think everyone has kind of alluded to and looking to some of the opportunities ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question because I think we're here in this country, we're under the delusion that we have a democracy in this country, that we actually wanted to have one. We never intended to have one. Our Constitution is not set up to establish democracy. It's not. It's set up to establish power for white men. And that's, I mean, if we want to keep it real, we want to really talk about, our Constitution is for landowners at that time was just white males. So we don't, and let me back up. I don't even want to say white males because they weren't white. They were French, Dutch, German who came over here. So this whole concept around whiteness is a farce as well. But so because we created a system that's working for those at the 1%, the system works for them. It's never intended to work for us. And so we got this idea that we can create housing, the American dream. Remember that? The white picket fence and some land, and that's going to be our democracy, right? So we manufacture that to create a middle class, restricting that for black and brown folks. So housing is a catalyst that we believe is the place that we can have this sense of freedom or this sense of democracy. But it really is, has stripped particularly New Jersey, which created suburban sprawl that really destroyed the environment and really created space where we have single family, one house on 4 acres. Like that doesn't make any sense. That's not practical sense, but that's what we do because that's what success is in this country. That's what democracy is, right? So we replaced democracy with consumerism. So we become consumers and think that's democracy, right? So we get comfortable with our homes and our cars, and many of us, to my colleague's point, either trying to keep up with the rat race, trying to live in New Jersey, working 2 jobs because we won't produce enough affordable housing because they're blocking that as well. We won't have same-day voter registration, so we can vote people out who refuse to do the right thing. So we've been sold a bill of goods that housing is a catalyst for democracy, and so we're just consumers of a lot of stuff, but we actually are deceived in thinking we actually have democracy.
Good points. Kiran, I'm going to go back to you and say, when we talk about that rat race, right? That chasing of those pieces. When we talk about New Jersey, as I noted before, we are doing, I noted a lot of things. We're doing things well in Jersey, whether you're talking reproductive freedom, whether you're talking some of these other things that we've been progressive on. But especially for Alice families, right, that you work so closely with, they are constantly just barely, able to keep up. I guess I'd ask you, how do you see policies affecting their involvement, and how could we change policies to allow them to be, it connects with everything, I'm sure, housing, everything we're all going to talk about here, but explain specifically for those families what New Jersey maybe has done well and what New Jersey needs to do better to help those families through policy or anything else.
Yeah, part of the ALICE research, we have a ALICE survival budget that breaks down, all the costs in a family's monthly budget, childcare, housing, all the things. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Eric and others around how we build that out. And in New Jersey, the survival budget for a family of 4 with an infant and a preschooler is $82,000 a year. That's 2 folks working, 2 kids, and you have a 5 and a 3-year-old. So that's the exact same construct. The federal poverty level is around just under 30 for a family of 4. So massive disconnect, and we see this in New Jersey as well as across the country. And the data shows that 37% of households in New Jersey fall below that ALICE threshold. 26% are ALICE households in New Jersey, 11% are poverty. So combined, you literally have almost 1 in 4 households who can't pay their bills. Every Friday, payday comes, and they're deciding to fix the car, buy groceries, or pay rent. And so it's a significant epidemic when we think about financial stability, and then the domino effect of all of that. So I think the one thing that we are really focused on in New Jersey is around childcare. That is the #1 cost item for a family in that construct. We estimate it's about $1,850 per month, which is non-licensed, non-center-based care. That's the bare minimum. And I don't know if folks have little kids, try to find childcare at those costs for 2 kids. And so I think we've tried to really focus on a lot of specific strategies, and the administration has been really positive, and we've seen some movement. The biggest challenge, though, is really around the service delivery coming at families in very challenging, difficult ways vertically. We don't serve families in a horizontal way. And it's a very, we all know it, we're in it, we're doing this work, but day in and day out for a family to have to try to access supports, if they're eligible, from literally going from place to place to place as opposed to one place where they can get services, that would be a huge, huge step forward. And then all the changes we have been able to make, all the things we've been working on would come together under that more of a horizontal approach.
Two follow-up pieces to that. Maybe I'd ask one, because when I think of Alice families, right on the edge all the time, what was the impact of COVID that you've seen? Obviously that was a devastating thing for so many families. Mm-hmm. It put everyone, the world, turned upside down. What was the impact that you've seen there, and how are Alice families coming out of that?
Yeah, so we issued a report about 8 months ago called The Pandemic Divide, because we studied all the data coming out right after I don't know when the pandemic ended, Mayor. I'm not really sure. But, we studied all the data at various points in time. And really what we've learned and what we all know is that there were 2 very distinct pandemic experiences. A lot of folks benefited. A lot of folks worked from home, saved money, all the things that a lot of families were able to do, kind of build savings, bring families back together, all of those things. then you had Alice folks who were still working, very much in all the places we needed, in the hospitals, the nursing homes, daycare centers, retail, all of that. And so what we know is the interventions that came around the rental assistance and the increase in the eligibility rates for eligibility requirements for childcare, a lot of the kind of pandemic supports kind of helped keep Alice families afloat. But then when all of those supports have really gone away, now we're seeing and we're expecting, and the new data actually comes out tomorrow from the American Community Survey, we're expecting that 37% that I talked about to be, north of 45 over the next year. So we know that families are really, really challenged, and now we have inflation and all these other pieces. And then the only other thing I'll add is, we're not even talking about families with documentation challenges. And that, getting back to democracy, and that we really are not talking about democracy for everyone, that's a whole nother piece. And we're not tracking or measuring those folks because we don't have the ability to do that, at least from the government perspective.
Yeah,
So where are they, right?
Ed, as I listen to that, I hear, how many people then have the time to go learn about candidates and where are they
Right.
on the issues and
Right.
how many get out to vote. Just lost in that conversation, right? You noted before, voters in the name, right? So your work is to try and bring it back to, you've got to have people connected to that. You've led work in Common Agenda for the Environment, right? And talking about that, hey, this is a baseline where we should be at. Explain a little, what is it? Explain it, and how do we get everybody involved in it and understand that it helps everybody, no matter the space we're in.
Yeah, so what we tried to do is, I've been doing this about 13 years, and the idea is to get as much input as possible to put together an agenda through the legislative process of 5 bills over 2 years. So we're just rounding out the 2-year legislative session that are going to help communities across New Jersey. And so we do that by, talking to environmental partners, partners in justice spaces, our members, different committees and things like that. Some of them include like 100% clean energy, which by 2035 is a concept and a bill we hope to get through the lame duck. And I know a lot of groups are working together on that. But the benefits there are when you move to clean energy, you close down fossil fuel plants. Those fossil fuel plants are in justice communities that are already having their air choked by so much pollution. And so, but the key is we have to get the definition right, and that's where working with really strong partners like Clean Water Action and Ironbound Community Corporation and the Environmental Justice Alliance of New Jersey to make sure that the definition is clear, that it doesn't have co-pollutants or some other crazy thing that people are using a back door to add more pollution. That's something we don't want, and that's kind of what working together helps us to accomplish. And I'll just mention too, corporations haven't been mentioned here, but under Citizens United, that gives corporations a voice in our democracy by spending money and speaking, and somehow they're people. And I think that has really eroded everything that we try to do at every corner because they just have so much more money, and money is power, and somehow they're a person or treated like a person, and it impacts, I will say, the environmental work a ton because a lot of these are for-profit polluters. And their bottom line, by doing it cleaner and keeping people healthy and make our communities more safer, comes at a bottom line cost where their shareholders are not going to make as much. And that's what we're fighting against, profits over people. And to us, that is one of the biggest threats to not only democracy, but also environmental protection, is that capitalistic mentality that you don't have to be moral, but you can be a person and spend unlimited amounts of money to influence our democracy. It's like a very challenging paradigm.
Yeah, no question. I mean, when the Supreme Court decided that, they basically say these are people, and the people are only beholden to their bottom line, because that is the goal of a lot of these corporations, by nature. So some challenges there. Eric, I'll go to you and just ask the question, as we all fight inequities in so many ways, right, in different ways. We still see the challenges that are there. And one of the things that it's often noted, New Jersey, one of the most diverse states, and then followed immediately by one of the most segregated states, And you mentioned something before around housing, right? That's a huge piece of it. And I'll ask you to comment on that and kind of the work you're doing in the space there. But then I'll also tie it in with, education we're hearing a lot about right now, especially with the lawsuit about segregated schools. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how those two go together, because they're clearly connected, and maybe what you're seeing is some solutions to kind of navigate forward through those spaces.
Well, housing policy, education policy goes hand in hand. And it's interesting, I want to, just sway a little bit, because you mentioned something, COVID-19, which is a very very interesting thing that happened in COVID-19, right? You had no industry, no business, everything was shut down. Matt Desmond brings this up. It's very interesting that the poverty rate didn't increase. It's strange, isn't it? The poverty rate didn't increase when nobody was working, industries were shut down. What happened was, because of corporate interests, our government decided to be a real government and stepped in and provided all the resources. Provided all the resources that people needed, not to protect the people, but to protect corporate interests in the banks. Right? And so New Jersey, think about this for a moment, coming out of COVID-19 had a $6 billion surplus. $6 billion surplus. So tied it into housing. How could we use that money for more housing and improve our schools? Well, we have a lawsuit now because New Jersey Constitution says our schools must be integrated. And we've done nothing with that $6 billion to make sure that happened, right? We have made some investments in affordable housing. The Murphy administration have made some investment in affordable housing, but it's not enough. We can do more. We could end homelessness if we wanted to, right? So yeah, we can, this is part of the challenge. We come from this scarcity mindset, thinking that we don't have the resources. COVID-19 showed me that we do have the resources. We just choose not to use them for housing and education, right? Think about that for a moment, right? The devastation of COVID-19, but the poverty rate didn't increase because government stepped in. How, why can't we provide homeless people with a house with wraparound services? We can give that away, right? We could do that if we wanted to. We sent a person to the moon. We sent people to when we want to do something, we get it done. And I'm dead serious. When this country wants to do something, we can get it done. So we could end poverty, we could end homelessness, we can educate every kid in this state with the proper education, the resources that they need, the wraparound services that they need, provide housing for everyone, and won't hurt a thing if we really wanted to. The challenge is, because we don't have same-day voter registration, the powers that be, the status quo, want to keep things the way they are because it serves the corporate interests, it serves the banks, it serves those that who wants to stay in power, who like having titles but don't like to do anything. So, I think housing is the catalyst, is the catalyst for really solving this issue of poverty and homelessness, and I think we can do it if we the people demand it. One of the things, and I'll shut up after this. One of the things that so interesting to me, Dr. King said, the rich get socialism, the poor get capitalism, because we frame these words, and we like to do this in this country. Label people with entitlements. It's like if you own a home, if you live in a house and you have a mortgage, you live in subsidized housing. You live in affordable housing. That's just about the government subsidize your housing when you claim your housing tax credit. So the subsidies, it's the same money, but for people with low income, we got to tell them, well, it's affordable housing, or they're Section 8, or it's public housing. But folks who live in the suburbs, who write off their mortgages, who have a $2-3 million house, that's public housing as well. But we just don't call it that. We don't frame it that way, because that's for, the wealthy.
Kim, maybe I'll go to you, and how do those all connect for you in that we're talking about housing, we're talking about segregation. When we talk about affordable housing, or however we're framing it, right, it's often in communities that are under-resourced in so many ways, have challenges that are imposed by the capitalist system or profit, seeking companies that have kind of put us where we are. So how does the work you do, kind of show people that there is a path through this, or there's a way to make it better, I guess? How's that happening in the work you do?
Well, as it relates to the environmental justice movement, The work is getting better because more of us are entering the space and being recognized. Funding is coming to the organizations for those individuals who live each and every day in the most marginalized communities. You know, when I started down this path 24 years ago, I might have been one African American in the room. Now when we come in the room, it's at least 20, right? We had other people speaking for us. Big green organizations, predominantly white-led organizations, dictating what should happen in our communities. We are the experts in our communities. So what is happening is that now that we have a seat at the table and engaging, our environment is everywhere. Our kids can't learn in schools that are unhealthy, where the water is contaminated, where the air that they breathe each and every day, they have chemicals from all the chemicals that the custodial staff might be using to wipe down the desks, clean the rooms. So that's impacting their ability to learn. When you think about households and homes, poor people live in some of the worst housing stock that we have. There's the oldest stock. Lead paint chips, lead dust. All these things have an impact. So the work that we do, we connect the dots to create healthy homes, healthy communities, healthy schools. We can't separate where our children recreate, where we work, right? Where we pray, where we congregate. It's all one cycle. And so we lift up these issues and connect them to our environment. Because people sometimes think that folks who look like me and live in the city of Newark or in the EJ community don't value our environment. But we do, but when you live in environments with crime, no jobs, poor education, right, unhealthy children, everything is stacked down. So you're concerned about the environment, but you're also concerned about a job, a place to live, right? And so we have to understand that these things are connected, and when we really begin to look at our environment at the core of everything, then things will begin to function. As humans, we have a right, to breathe clean air on a daily basis. For a lot of folks, that is not a right. To have, quality, safe, affordable drinking water, that's not a right. You see what has happened in some of our schools throughout New Jersey that are built on Superfund sites. They build a school, the next thing you know, cancer cluster.
That's right.
And they say, oh, what happened? You built the school on a toxic site. So all of what we all are doing, and when it comes to actually voting and having the power for our voices to count, you have to deal with the issues. There's a lot of individuals who don't believe in a political structure because their voices have never been heard, and the issues that they prioritize are the issues of the rich, the issues of those who have the money to talk about what their priorities are. And then our communities become the sacrifice zones, the dumping zones, because of redlining, right? Because of all the industries. NIMBY, not in my backyard. I'm not going to put it in Montclair, but let me put it in Newark. And so these are the things that connect our work, and that's why it's so important that each and every day Clean Water Action goes out and we talk to people. We talk to communities, and we also endorse candidates to make sure they're doing right by us. The accountability is important, and we just have to let them know that you can't exist without your environment. And that's the main connector of all our work.
Well, that's a huge connection piece, and kind of summarize it. And I know I want to kind of ask you about this. I talked to you about before the agenda for the environment and the work that you're doing there. And when we talk about the connection points, and Kim just kind of talked about, all the pieces and kind of tying it back to the environment. But I was curious because you recently had a discussion, a webinar on education reform, race, and a lot of other pieces that kind of tied together. And I thought that was interesting because it was a very tangible way to say, you do think they're all connected. Talk to me a little bit about like what was, what happened on the webinar, what was the conversation, and how you do tie it to all the pieces that we're talking about today.
Well, first, I spent 10 years teaching. So I was a high school chemistry teacher for 10 years. So I think education is the most important thing that we can do. But what became apparent as we were, our organization is part of a large conglomerate that's been around for since 50 years or something like that. And its past is not necessarily a bright one. As a white-led organization, there has been policies that have been supported that were environmentally racist. They are exacerbating and causing harm to communities. And so we have to understand that. And part of, as we were setting out to do things differently, we wanted to work and hear from folks. And what we were hearing from folks is, well, these issues matter, but as Kim said, it's not just that, it's the other things. Access to quality transportation and access to housing, access to a job and education. And so we stopped saying, just tell us how we can work on your issues that relate to the environment, and said, let's work on all the issues that affect you in your environment, right? And that's where that series came up. I think it was number 6. And putting together an opportunity for us to educate our members, ourselves, to educate each other across different content areas where people are experts and are also fighting for justice on the front lines, to see where the synergy is and also where there's an opportunity to make headway. So people might say it's mission creep, but actually it's very much the same way as in a school, and I'm very familiar with this. Kids can't learn if they're starving. So we provide breakfast and lunch as part of a free and reduced lunch program in our schools when I was school board president. You can't just ignore that, right? You can't ignore what happens when they go home, too. That's why we have social services that we can provide. It's limited how much we can do, probably because people aren't spending the money in the right ways, like the Reverend mentioned. So for us, that's been our approach. We work on environmental issues. That's kind of our core, but there's so much that touches on that that's critical if we're going to make the right headway. And so it's really been about creating those alliances that we can be an ally on other issues that are really outside the one that's in our name or just in our mission. Our mission has shifted to be more encompassing. We're still leading in the environmental space, but with an eye on the full cross section, I guess is the best way to say it. And we think that's the right thing to do. And I think we're a better organization for it. And we hope that we can add some of our relationships. As we build relationships with elected officials, can we parlay them into other issue areas where folks are working and where our relationships exist to deliver results? And I think that's what you want to do as a contributing member of society, and our organization is also committed to that.
Thank you. Kiran, I might go to you and ask you directly, as I hear that answer, I remember Chris Estevez from Latino Action Network in our first conversation that we had was talking about his mom, and he was talking about the difficulty she had to participate in the political process, right, living in poverty and always kind of struggling in other areas, and that was not the top of mind issue. I guess I'm hearing from everybody a focus on all the work and the connectivity around the work, but also the connection to being engaged, electing individuals, getting those who do talk about your issues or want to talk about your issues. In the space that you're in, how do you connect, what you do, and then more broadly, what the issues that those you serve are facing or care about, and then tying that into the political system or the political process and making sure their voices are heard? How does that fit into the work you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. We always start with the data, and we really make an intentional effort to really start with who are we talking about. We all know who Alice is, but you may not understand the depth and scope of what an Alice family is experiencing in New Jersey. And so we really try, when we're with a legislator or a public official or a commissioner, governor's office, wherever, it's let's really drill down who we're talking about, where they live, what their issues are, what they're facing. Because
can you tell everyone what ALICE stands for again, just so everyone's,
Yes, I know. Thank you. It's Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed, and it's the 37% of households in New Jersey that fall below the ALICE threshold. And it's really a way of really redefining poverty and understanding what poverty means. And so we always start with the data. We start with that percentage, we start with the budget, we look at what the costs are, and then we try to really kind of go from there to say what policy issues are we all working on in that horizontal fashion that we can really lend a voice? And one of the things that is really important to our work is we have a number of partnerships across the spectrum. One of the things that we've been able to do during the pandemic was convene a lot of leaders, Eric was one of them, lots of folks across the state, to really say this is a moment in time. And I really appreciate hearing the Reverend talk about what we did accomplish during the pandemic, and to not forget that, because we knew that this was a moment in time for Alice families to really put resources and think differently and think outside the box. And so it's really about convening partners, convening leaders, doing everything that Kim talked about in terms of how do you connect everything all together, because at the core of this is families. And I think about my family. I grew up Alice. I'm first generation. My father immigrated here in the 60s from India, married my mother, who was living in the Irish tenements in Newark on Goddard Street. My parents, I grew up Alice. I didn't know I was Alice. You know, we had many months of sleeping in winter coats and not really sure why, but that's what my mother did to keep us warm. You know, a lot of those experiences that as you get further and further into this work, it's easier to separate from the family connection. And I think that's something that at United Way we balance the data with our families. I was saying to the folks who are organizing, I left our holiday gift distribution program. We're serving 2,000 families gifts over the next 6 days, and making sure that we continually center what families are doing. And that's a small piece, right? But it's the holidays. Families need assistance, and I think without doing that both work, data and direct service, you really are losing sight. I'm not sure if I answered your question around policy, but.
No, you did, and by the way, not a little thing, big deal, by the way, everything we can do, important.
Yeah.
And I would just say, I guess I'd ask as a follow-up to that though, important policies, right? The things you're working on, keeping centered in the conversation that it's about people, it's about families, it's about, you know, that child, that person needs help, that mother, that father, you know, whoever that is. People relate to that, right? They want to help that person as opposed to sometimes just a number. How in the work you do you connect that in a way to political involvement, right? Like I heard a lot in the conversation from a lot of others around, well, you know, we've got to get people who believe in the policies. We've got to get those who are going to actually do something. We've got to make sure it's connected in a full way. I guess I'd ask, is there a space in the work you do and through your organization that, while not inherently saying, you know, vote for this person, vote for that person, but saying, how can we also tie it into you having a greater voice in the democratic, as it is, the process, to make sure that, you know, you're not always fighting as uphill a battle if you've got those fighting for you in your elected official. So is there space for that, I guess?
No, absolutely. And we are a little different than some of my colleagues on the stage in that we are not a political advocacy organization. We're what we say, a think and a do tank is kind of the language we use. But what we try to do is we do participate in the budget hearing process, and anytime there's an opportunity to speak and advocate, we always have Alice with us, right? We always have an Alice family or a member of that family really speaking their truth and sharing kind of the challenges that they're experiencing. And the two areas we've been really vocal on with partners is around all the work around childcare, advocating for subsidy rates, advocating for family care providers in particular, who until this past year, even if they were licensed, were not eligible to receive increased reimbursement rates, even if they went through the licensure process. Now they are, so that's been a big win. So really a tremendous focus on childcare. And then the other is all the tax credits. You know, the obviously New Jersey, among all the other states in the country, has a really strong EITC. Could be better, for sure, but really driving that agenda around EITC, and then CTC. Seeing a New Jersey state CTC has also been a huge win. We operate the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. There are 8 grantees in New Jersey. The IRS has a grant program. And so we do free tax prep assistance for 8,000 families across our 5 counties. And the access and helping families access those tax credits is transformative. And we know EITC is a tremendously aggressive, strong, research-based strategy to help especially single women come out of poverty over the course of their career. So those are the 2 or 3 policy areas that we focus on, and we always have Alice with us.
Yeah, well, thank you for the work you do in that space. I know even in Montclair, it's very helpful, and
Yes,
appreciate that.
yes, on South Fullerton.
Kim, let me ask you a question in that, I think I heard from Kiran, one of the big things is, childcare. Like if I was, what's the one thing you see next, right? What's the one thing that right now could make a huge difference? There are many, but that, I hear at the forefront. What would you say as something you think, achievable right there, maybe a big thing, maybe a small thing, but we can get this done and this would make a big difference moving forward?
Well, making sure the individuals we elect and hold in trust have the political will to always do what's right by the people, and especially for the environmental changes that we seek. It is not difficult to err on the side of precaution. It is not difficult to say everyone as humans deserve to live in healthy, thriving communities. It shouldn't be that, and I have to say this example as a 4th-generation Norker, but that Newark is the home to the largest incinerator in the Northeast, when in actuality, every municipality in Essex County was supposed to have their own incinerator. But why did it end up that Newark was the place to now have this incinerator? Because politicians got involved and decided not in my backyard and knew all the health impacts and how it was killing individuals, causing cancers, premature deaths, high asthma rates. So we said, let's keep it in Newark. Let's keep it in Camden. Let's keep it in Jersey City. Let's keep it in Elizabeth. And communities where people of color are living. That is environmental racism. We have to get our elected officials, if I could just say, hey, here's the mic, pass the mic, this is what I need you all to do, is agree that we're going to stop that practice of constantly on a daily basis saying my life doesn't matter or my children's life doesn't matter or anybody who look like me or is a person of color. That cannot happen in the state, because when we elect individuals, we elect them to serve us. We don't elect them to serve the big industry. We don't elect them to serve, where the money comes from. We elect them to serve us. And so I would start there. If, we're going big, get these politicians to stand up, have a spine and a back, and do what's right by the people. Put their interests first for once. Stand on the side of righteousness and just. And we can't separate, our economic, social, and political, we can't separate it. It is all tied together. Right? But those individuals have the power to do what's right, but they are selecting not to. And then I might add just another one. We have bills up in the legislature right now where individuals refuse to pass the bills. And one I wrote down, and Dave Pringle's in the audience, so if I don't say this, he's going to really get on me. But the unaffordable dirty gas bill, Assembly 577. This is something that came up in the Assembly Committee and has never been heard in the Senate. And we're talking about now they have the opportunity to bring it up, to kind of help and change lives, but they're not acting, for the people.
So what do you think the path is? What do we do about that? Like I hear you, right? So what do we do? Right? Everything you said, I think everybody here would agree, right? So yeah, we agree.
What we all need to do is make sure our voices are heard, make sure we are calling these politicians each and every day and letting them respect the vote that we gave them. We pay their salaries, right? There it is, accountability. Hold them accountable to the people. This is about the people's business. This ain't about their personal pockets, right? This is what they're supposed to do for us. Any person, and I'm a former elected official, if I'm not doing right by what my community elected me to do, vote me out. We have to start not listening to what the party bosses say, line, vote this line and this person. No. Go with where the issues are. And if individuals are not standing up and being accountable for what you need to live a better life, vote them out. That's what we all need to do.
There it is.
Amen.
And I'll go to you. And,
I mean, since you asked.
Yes.
That's it.
Tell me how you really feel. And maybe I'll go to you and ask, same question in terms of what's a thing you see as an opportunity right there. But maybe I frame it for you. I guess to somebody who's observing, you see what just happened around wind energy and some of the things environmentally, especially. And when you started one of your answers talking about, just moving to clean energy and the impact it has on our communities. Again, tied with everything we're talking about here. But when we see something like that, like seem to fall apart or whatever else, does that worry you? Are you still very optimistic in terms of, yes, doing all that work to tie back to the environmental justice work? Explain how it all fits in, and then the same question though, what do you see on the horizon as kind of an opportunity?
How much time do I have there? I mean, one thing I'll say, what's the most important thing really is protecting our democracy. But I also like to encourage people to get involved, whatever. And I know it's hard because there's so many different things happening, but really serving in elected office or volunteering in your local community on a board or a commission makes a difference. We often say, like, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So get to the table. As hard as that might be, try to make yourself available because, as an elected official in my town, we really listen to all our boards and commissions. These folks are volunteering, and they're deliberating, and they're insightful. They come with various backgrounds, and it's very informative. And I would also say, too, the elected officials don't represent America. I'm openly gay. In the legislature, there is 1 out of 120 openly gay elected official in the New Jersey legislature. And you look at women versus men, it's nowhere near where it should be. And like demographic after demographic, and partly because the institutions knock down folks that don't look like them or act like them or don't fit whatever it is. And you, like in my political career, I've seen a lot of that, but kind of like a weeble wobble and get up. So that's like my little, like, what can we do? I know it's depressing to watch certain things, and it's hard because there's a dismay that it's not perfect or exactly how we want it to be. But it is made up of people. And if you're part of it, you can help shape it and make it better. And I believe that to my core, even though there's 100 things I roll my eyes at all the time about being involved. And then on the offshore wind part and clean energy, et cetera, folks should know that the fossil fuel industry is spending millions of dollars in New Jersey to spread a misinformation campaign, to do everything they can to keep us on the business as usual, fossil fuel addicted path. That's the one that lines their pockets, their corporate shareholders, and also pollutes our air, our water, and our land. And they will do nothing to stop. In fact, the offshore wind folks are coming out against the 100% clean energy bill because it will stop the use of clean natural gas. They're just literally working for the fossil fuel industry. It's in their literature of why they should be opposing it. It comes right out of the playbook of the oil and gas industry. They want to keep us using their product as long as possible, and it's polluting. And if you live in Newark, you're 4 times more likely to have asthma and cancer than living at 10 miles outside of Newark. Why is that? Right? Because of all the things Kim talked about, and that's real. And if we move to clean energy with a strong definition, that's going to cut back on our fossil fuel usage, and that's going to mean some businesses are going to be without profits. And what we saw in the last election is these folks ran multi-million-dollar campaigns to eliminate or knock out pro-environment candidates, and in every single case, they lost. So the legislature is getting 1 more pro-conservation senator, and the Democrat-Republican balance is exactly the same. And then the Assembly, that's the Senate, the Assembly is getting 5 more pro-environment Assembly members. So we can do more work to protect these. So people aren't buying what they're peddling, but they're creating a lot of stir among rich people who are worried about their views, and they put your health ahead of what they look out and see. And they're happy to have your lungs, if you live in an area where these fossil fuel generating facilities are, be the filters for our air at your own peril, asthma, cancer, et cetera. And it's a real thing that's happening, but they're losing, and I think they're losing because voters are smart and are showing up, but we need to get more of the word out there and get people more engaged, because it's convoluted and literally they have big firms putting together their messages about just lies that sound reasonable and get you to think that these things are going to be harmful. They're not. The greatest threat to all our communities, in the energy space is climate change itself, and it's wreaking havoc on our air and flooding our houses and all those things. So I said how long? I went probably longer than you wanted, but I answered 2 questions in one. So get involved in the democracy and don't believe the lies of the fossil fuel companies.
Well, you did. You and Kim are kind of stealing the last question I was going to say, which is like tell everyone what we can do. But but you're getting to that. But Eric, I'll go to you and just say. Specifically around housing or anything, what do you see that gives you hope and optimism? Like, what do you see as right there on the horizon with certainly the work and effort that has to go in, but what do you see as the next big thing that we can do in that space?
I think I'm hopeful. I will say that, the pandemic showed us one thing about that if we continue to produce affordable housing, it will help our community, will help New Jersey. That since the Supreme Court decision in 2015 around the Mount Laurel Doctrine that put the system back into the courts and not put it with a state agency that was politicized, and we know the former governor just refused to let affordable housing production happen for 10 years, so we lost 10 years of affordable housing production. So we're really looking for this legislature, and I think they will produce something that will make sure we codify the current system that keeps this system in place, where we can produce more affordable housing. We've got a long way to go, but since 2015, we produced more affordable housing than the whole years of COA. And so keeping this system in place is important because we got a lot of catching up to do. We've underproduced affordable housing in this state. That makes market rate housing cost more money. You want to know why it's so expensive to live in New Jersey? We haven't produced enough affordable housing. And so when we do that, I'm hopeful in the coming days there's going to be some announcements about really us keeping this system in place, that elected officials would be courageous, because I think courage is what's needed in this country when it comes to political figures. It is so ironic. This is stuff that keeps me awake at night. I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning last night thinking about elected officials and courage. One of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't get credit for this, one of our greatest presidents for civil rights in the history of America was LBJ, not LeBron James. Lyndon Baines Johnson. There are at least 6 significant pieces of civil rights legislation in this country's history. 3 of them was passed under his administration. 3 of them. 3 out of the 6. And in one term, how is that? This guy, against all odds, said, and they told him, you'll never win the South again. And know what he said? I don't care, it's the right thing to do.
That's right. That's right.
3 pieces of civil rights legislation. Discrimination in employment, the Voting Rights Act, which they gutted, and the Fair Housing Act. Not to mention the Great Society Initiative, Medicare, Medicaid, what we all use. Like, this guy doesn't get the credit, I know, because of Vietnam, by the way, he was trying to broker peace. But this guy, the Great Society trying to end poverty, 6 of the major pieces of legislation around civil rights in this country's history, 3 of them was under his administration, and he only served 1 term. That's courage. So if our elected officials, I think we need to give them courage to say, if you don't vote for the stuff that we need, we want to vote you out. I think we need to give our elected officials, give them permission to be courageous and say, do the right thing. Put people first. That's democracy.
That's right.
Put people first. Invest in ending poverty. Look, all we do with segregation is we just treat the symptoms of segregation. We don't attack segregation itself. Attacking segregation is ending poverty, ending housing segregation, putting money into educating our kids at the proper level, right? Making sure our communities are environmentally friendly, right? Green spaces, like, community gardens, like building with these. Now, we have the technology, we have the ability, we have the know-how to do it, right? We just have to do it, and we have to force them to do it. And sometimes, look, sometimes I get discouraged. That's why I woke up 2 o'clock in the morning. I said, let me give myself some courage. And I looked up, because I was thinking about it, like, boy, like, This time, right now, in the lame duck session, there's some significant pieces of legislation that's on the table. Will our legislators have the courage to do the right thing? Now, here's a president under chaos, civil rights, civil unrest, racial unrest going on all over the country. Think about that. This guy passed 3 major pieces of civil rights legislation, and there's only been 6 in our country, might be 5. It was done by one dude. That's you know, I'm hopeful, because my ancestors was hopeful. Like when they told us that, you know, you guys know Lincoln, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't end slavery. That it was the 13th Amendment, and even the 13th Amendment says slavery is still legal if you're in prison. So we still have slavery in this country. But my point is, like, if we, you know, we really look at the Constitution, hold people accountable for it, make it work for all of us and not just for some of us, right? Make it work. You know, when you look at New Jersey's flag, is the New Jersey flag over somewhere around? Underneath, it's a saying in here. It says liberty and prosperity. You see that? That's the words under the flag. It says liberty and prosperity. Did you know that? Liberty and prosperity. That's under the flag. The question is, liberty and prosperity for who? Courage. We have to force them to be courageous. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'd say this. I think we'll appreciate that. And I'd ask you all maybe just briefly as we kind of wrap it up, to everybody here, everyone who listens to this, what is something tangibly that people can do, right? We heard broadly, certainly, you know, hold people accountable, right? Elect those who share our vision and views. What would you say? You know, just kind of a quick round robin here. What would you guys say is the thing you'd ask and say, here's what you can do. Here's what you can do in the space you're in and to help the cause, and here's what you can do to protect our democracy. They are related, but what would you say?
I love the courage, and I completely agree. I think tactically, we think about our ALICE workforce and our workforce in general, and I think the biggest issue for ALICE workers is wage. And the devaluing that we place on the service and the care economy and the inequity of wage. And I think that until we're really ready to have the courage to have those conversations and talk about shifting the power structure and the financial structure in corporate America and providing, forget about livable wage, we're way beyond that, the inequities. And I think unless we are really ready to have constructive, real, planful conversations around wage, we're not going to move the needle on this. We're going to be on that, what I talked about when you first started, that fight to survive treadmill of a working family starting at 5:45 and going till 11 o'clock at night. That's what it's going to be.
Kim, I know you're going to hold back.
She's very shy.
She's going to be shy about this,
Yeah.
but tell us, like, what is something you say, this is what we can do?
Let your voice be heard. Vote, organize, right? So it's voice. Vote, organize every day in your communities, right? It is truly, truly important that we lift as we climb. We can't afford to leave anybody behind. And so our climate reality is not for the future generations. It's for us right now. So we have to act each and every day. And we have to do it with our voice. And we have to do it by organizing in our communities, engaging our communities, and then lifting those up with us. Then we could change any and everything that we want. And so that's what we have to do. Don't be shy. Let your voice be heard.
Excellent. Ed?
I think I said it before. It's get involved. You know, I would say, you know, wake up and realize that these things are happening. You can be optimistic about them, but be part of the change that there is. And probably part of that is putting your phone down and, you know, the doom scrolling, and think about all the time you're spending when you look at that screen report that you could be doing something else to positively impact your community. And it doesn't have to be like a massive thing. It can be just a little thing, volunteering, or getting involved in a committee or a commission. It makes a difference. And particularly a message for our young people that feel very dismayed with politics. It's even more important to have your voice be heard. It means a ton, and it has the most impact when you're actually involved in speaking. And that's really critical.
Agree more. Eric?
I would say we have to reimagine what our communities look like. It's something to how we kill the imagination of our kids, right? When kids have, these great imaginations. It comes from the creative force that we all came from. Like, we are created beings, and we have creativity, and we don't use it enough because we don't imagine the way our communities could be. One of my favorite Broadway shows, Hadestown. My son was in Hadestown. Shameless plug. My son was.
He was in it. That's
But he's been on Broadway. He's in Bradley Cooper's film, Netflix, Maestro. He's in that too. So it's just a shameless plug. But Hadestown, one of the scenes, he talks about the kid was amused, and he chose to live in the world the way it could be, in spite of the way it is. Such a deep line. And I think we need to do that. Let's live in a world the way it should be. Let's imagine the world the way it should be in spite of the way it is. And that's that creative energy. We are creative beings. We have creative ways to fix and solve these solutions. We just have to imagine the world that we want to be, that we want to see our communities, like that it represents all of who we are. It reflects the diversity. It reflects the different cultures, the ethnic groups. It reflects the different income levels. And to your point, like, if we don't get to this economics thing, if we don't really have a serious conversation about a guaranteed basic income, right, then what are we doing? And so let's reimagine New Jersey. Let's reimagine our communities. Let's reimagine our block. I'm a block captain. I don't know why they elected me to do it. But reimagine these things and let's build community. We can do that. We just get that creative energy that's inside of you and use it. We don't use it enough. This is the last thing I'm going to say. I'm a big fan of Jay-Z, one of my favorite, best rappers of all time. Jay-Z says something. What would your life be like if you knew you couldn't fail? What would your life be like if you knew you couldn't fail? That everything you did, you knew you couldn't fail. That's a different way to approach life. And so I think we have to reimagine, why people tease me because I say this Mark Twain quote all the time, and I think it's a brilliant quote. The two most important days in a person's life is the day they're born and the day they find out why. It's powerful. Your why, reimagining who you are and what you want to be a part of, what neighborhood, what community, what state you want to be a part of, that reflects everything that's good about our values and our communities and our ancestors, all of our ancestors, that it reflects who we are, that we put people first. And I'm not, talking about people not being wealthy. Dr. King said, I'm not opposed to the rich getting rich. I'm just asking them to slow down a little bit so we can catch up. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, we're a perfect way to finish and inspire us. Let's give them all a big round of applause for tonight. I want to thank all of you. I appreciate you guys being here. I certainly also want to thank East Brunswick Public Library. Let's give all of them a big round of applause for having us in this space. The whole Protecting Our Democracy team, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you for helping to put this together. And lastly, I'll just say again to all of you, thank you for participating. Thank you for being part of it. And as you think you heard from every single one up here, it's important to be involved, to be engaged, and the fact that you are, the fact that you're looking to help make that difference is making a difference. So thank you again. Thank you for coming out tonight, and certainly stay around. I know we're going to have a little reception, and some stuff is in the back, so please feel free. And everybody here, I know if they can, we'll stay and mingle a little bit, and hopefully sign up if you haven't already. But we'll let you know the next thing happening as well. So thank you very much, everybody, and thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you.